Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. We round out this second hour with an examination of the NBA championship odds. DRS, we have said it. Since the All-Star break, it's not the second half, it's the stretch run of this NBA regular season. 9 of 32 teams, that's it, have played fewer than 60 games, and everybody with exactly 59. We're talking about 20 games remaining to figure out your playoff positioning around the postseason formats in the NBA. Are you going to be a play-in tourney team, seed 7 through 10 in the respective conference standings? Are you going to be right into the playoffs, 1 through 6? Where will all those ping pong balls stack up if you are a team tanking, looking ahead to the lottery and the Cooper Flag sweepstakes? We start with those championship prices. Well, Donny, the story for a majority of this NBA campaign has been the exact same thing at the top, a tier of 2. The reigning champs in the favorites all year long. The Celtics a little bit ahead of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who is a lot ahead of everybody else. A 20-cent distinction between the C's and the Thunder, plus 170, plus 190, before we have more than a $5 drop-off to the team with the best record around the NBA, who just split their 4-game regular season set against the Celtics on Friday night in the Cleveland Cavaliers. But still, as the odds makers see it, it's really a peg of 2. Boston, then Oklahoma City.
Yeah, if we're lining it up, too, there is a tier of 3, right? It's the Celtics, it's the Thunder, and the Cavaliers. Yeah. But understand this, too. Like, the Celtics sit up top at a plus 170 price, which is over OKC. And correct me if I'm wrong. Like, the Celtics aren't going to be the 1 seed in the East, which means they're going to be the road team and possibly play, if everything lines up, Celtics Eastern Conference Finals, and that will be the home court advantage to the Cavaliers. Should the Boston Celtics win that, then they go to the NBA Finals, which I believe Oklahoma City, if they make it there, would be the number 1 overall seed and absolutely get the home court advantage there based on record. So for me, I say, well, it's probably going to be OKC at plus 190 or the Cavs as a 7-1 to price for me, which is the way that I would actually like to bet that. I understand. And again, the NBA is so much different than regular sports. We say, okay, Donnie, well, what did they do? You just saw the Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Boston Celtics. But then again, we're saying, well, the Celtics weren't full gas in that game. And when the Celtics are in the playoffs and rested and focused on your team and everybody's healthy, that's a completely different situation. And it may be so. But I do think we just throw out the regular season sometimes and say, like, hey, it's really close. Like, the Cavaliers aren't a half game ahead of the Celtics. They're well ahead of the Celtics. They've beaten the Celtics. And as I told you on that game on Friday night, which I did like the Celtics, figuring that all their starters would be in the game and they weren't, that's one that you file away. Like, we can beat you on your home court. And we have home court advantage, talking about from the Cavaliers section. So for me, if there's those 3 teams here, I'm more apt to bet if I had 2 of them, OKC and Cleveland over Celtics, just because of the price point. And I believe in home court advantage.
Plus 190 is the number not just for OKC to win a title, but for the Celtics and the Thunder to see each other in the NBA Finals. Plus 190 already, and we still have more than a month to go in this NBA regular season, and then the playoffs. And yeah, OKC is sitting pretty out west. They have a 10.5 game lead over both the Lakers and the Nuggets for the 1 seed. They are very close to clinching that number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference. But Donnie, to me, the value is with the Cavaliers at a 7-1 price. I think Boston is going to win the East. I know the Celtics would be a favorite, even without home floor advantage against Cleveland in a potential Eastern Conference Finals matchup. And this is me saying, having seen the Cavaliers proven they can hang with the Celtics at the very least and beat the Celtics on any given night, I still would expect Boston to win the Eastern Conference crown. But at a 7-1 price for the Cavaliers to win an NBA championship, I think I'll have value if I expect the Cavaliers to be the 1 seed and be in that spot. And Donnie, there's another team around the NBA, along with those top 3, that has won 40 games. Now, the New York Knicks at 40-20. But we know the Knicks can't beat the best. So I'll take the Cavs and the Celtics, expecting that to be the Eastern Conference Finals matchup, and I'll take the value on the Cavaliers. There is that tier of 3, really a tier of 2, and then you got to double the price of Cleveland even to get to Denver.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, too, because a lot of times, like we just talked about NCAA action heading into March Madness. Like, you know what, man? Legitimate chance to win it. Iowa State, Texas Tech, 30-1s and 20-1s. I don't get those vibes. at this time when you look at the NBA. Like, hey, let me take the Knicks at 22-1. Do you think that team is championship ready right now? And that's not an unbelievable price at 22-1. The Golden State Warriors, who get Jimmy Butler and like floundering around a bit on their season, as if I'm going to take them at 25-1. No, it seems like the best teams because, yes, we understand Duke and Auburn are the front runners, but there is so much value down the board in college basketball. There's not much value down the board in the NBA.
These best-of-7 series, the NCAA tournament is exactly that, a tournament. Hour number 3 up next. 7 games slate around the association on this Monday night. We will preview a ton of them here on the early line. You want picks? You want previews? You want breakdowns? You've come to the right place. The 2 premier NBA handicappers on this here SportsGrid network, live right on a Monday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. DRS, our first game to break down, potentially a playoff preview around the Western Conference. The Oklahoma City Thunder, unless something disastrous happens to their play down the home stretch of this season, will be the 1 seed in the Western Conference. The Rockets trying to battle for that playoff positioning. 4, 5 seed, we shall see where Houston ends up. OKC on the road last night. A rather big game for the Thunder. They got into a scuffle against the San Antonio Spurs, winning by 14 on the road, nearly scoring 150. Why hear about that game when you can look at this playoff preview? Now a 9.5-point spread in favor of OKC back home. Total at 228.5. What do you like tonight? Will it be a comfortable Thunder win?
I think the Thunder do win, but I'm agreeing here with this line movement here. By the way, FanDuel in New Jersey yesterday opened this line at -12. It's down to 9.5 here. Most of the outlets across the board also at 9.5. But take a look at the total. 222.5, the opening number, juiced up a touchdown up to 228.5. So I do think we get points in scoring, but it is one of those things, again, really good basketball team at OKC. You think they can win. Doesn't mean they have to be by double digits. I would have liked to have that line over double digits where it doesn't sit right now. But I got to tell you, if you played yesterday and you had a tough game, you're still playing on a back-to-back. Yes, I understand it's at home. Give me the Houston Rockets to stay within double digits in this basketball game. I'll buy that line movement.
DRS, 6 games for OKC since returning from the All-Star break. They've been at least a 9-point favorite in all 6. The Thunder have been favored in all but 2 games this year, including that NBA Cup title game against the Milwaukee Bucks. And in the 6 games since returning from All-Star weekend, 6 consecutive overs for the Thunder. They have won 5 of 6. They have only covered 3 times. Every time they have covered, they have won by double digits as a double-digit favorite. But Houston, 11-7-1 against the spread as an underdog. The Rockets, who near the end of January were 32-14 in prime position as the 2 seed in the Western Conference standings, have dropped 9 of their last 14, trying to play better basketball, focused on that playoff positioning. I do think Houston can keep this game within striking distance. Elsewhere in the Lone Star State, a play-in tournament preview perhaps between the 2 teams in the 9 and 10 spots in the Western Conference standings. Sacramento, 31-28, 9 seed. Dallas, 32-29, 10 seed at this moment in the Western Conference standings. And Dallas, a slight home underdog, getting 2 points from Sacramento, total of 231.5. What's the play tonight in Big D?
Yeah, see that graphic, -1.5 for the Dallas Mavericks. That was the opening number here of the FanDuel in New Jersey. Now we're back over to a 2-point favorite, but not for the Mavericks. It's actually for the Sacramento Kings. 234.5, that opening number, now down to 231.5. Big injury information for the Sacramento Kings. You know me, love myself a good hamstring injury. Domantas Sabonis is not going to be active for this game and not even reevaluated, Ben, for at least 1 week. But having said that, Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, and Jonas Valanciunas, who can be a competent guy to come into the center position. I just think they're better than the Dallas Mavericks. And again, I'm reading into this line, even though it's a heavy public favorite right now in the Kings, I'm going to take the Kings even without Domantas Sabonis.
You know, I would look at it as well, DRS. Sacramento, weirdly, has only played 4 games since the All-Star break, but they have won their last 3, including outright in their last one on the road against the Rockets over the weekend on Saturday. They are now getting points here in that, or laying points here, against Dallas. The Mavs, who have often been an underdog since the trade of Luka Doncic, 17-14-1 against the spread as an underdog this season. Dallas trying to hold on to a play-in tournament spot. But with the Suns losing last night, it's a 4-game difference, DRS. It almost seems that in terms of teams on the outside of a postseason format trying to grab a play-in tourney position, that's pretty much done with the Suns being 4 games out. The Spurs without Victor Wembanyama not going to make any noise here down the home stretch of this regular season. It's really a conversation of can teams in the play-in tournament currently maybe get out and into the playoffs right away. Golden State trying to do that in catching the LA Clippers. Speaking of the Dubs, disappointing result on Saturday night in Philadelphia. Without Jimmy Butler in the starting lineup, they lose as a 6.5-point road favorite in Philadelphia. Now they take on one of the worst teams in the NBA tonight on the road in Charlotte. 12.5-point spread in favor of the Warriors against the Hornets, total at 228. That number on the rise early here on a Monday morning as well.
Yeah, we'll probably get points. You don't like to have the Warriors, who played yesterday in a horrible Sixers team, to get beat and then go on the road and face a horrible Charlotte team. You know they're going to win, but there's one thing to be said about that. I think the Golden State Warriors have a legitimate chance to win this by 2 touchdowns and cover that spread, because you look at the Hornets, like they're not even really being competitive even against the dregs of the NBA. And the fact that yesterday, if you would have saw the Warriors go in and handle their business against the Philadelphia 76ers, maybe it's different. I expect a big performance by the Warriors, which means getting back Jimmy Butler in the lineup, who sat out yesterday due to that back-to-back. I think they win by double digits in this game. So I will go with the line movement from 11.5 up to 12.5. I think Golden State wins this one by 2 touchdowns.
As they probably should, DRS. Put Jimmy Butler in the lineup because he did not play against the Philadelphia 76ers on Saturday. They have still won 7 of 8. They have been booked as a favorite in all 8 games. They have covered in all 7 wins. Jimmy Butler does have a points prop listed on the FanDuel Sportsbook, 17.5, the number tonight, as Butler and the Dubs head on the road to take on the Hornets. 26.5 is the number for Stephen Curry, who was pretty good on Saturday against the 76ers. Speaking of Philly, DRS, 3-point home favorite for Philadelphia tonight against the Portland Trailblazers. The Trailblazers playing an OT last night against the Cavaliers, but have been a really good team as an underdog. Why are the 76ers laying points to anybody at this juncture?
Because you're buying a ticket to the Grimies again tonight. What's it going to follow up with, a 50 spot tonight at this point? But by the way, 2-game win streak for the Sixers is going to break me here. Give me the points. Give me the points. Not even a handicap. Just give me the points, man. Give me them.
More around the NBA next. You know things are good for the NBA when the tease into this segment. Can the Hawks continue their play-in tournament push? In a 7-game slate tonight, we're going to talk about Atlanta's road trip to Memphis against the Grizzlies. The Grizz actually need to figure some things out. Lost 4 of 6 games since the All-Star break. The Hawks have dropped 4 of 5. Every game that they have lost, they have been booked as an underdog. And, Donny, I've been here a ton talking about how much better Atlanta has been this year as an underdog because they were porous, covering numbers when not expected to win the previous 2 NBA seasons. In fact, since the All-Star break, again, 1-4 straight up, 1-4 against the spread, the only win and cover as a slight favorite. Their 4 losses, 4 non-covers as an underdog. They had covered in their previous 6 games as a dog. Tonight in Memphis, you bet on it, Atlanta is getting points as well. A 9-point spread in favor of the Grizz. But, Donny, as you alluded to, maybe the story is that total. North of 250. 253.5 for tonight in the Grindhouse.
By the way, usually you would see that line, Ben, and say, oh, my goodness, like it opened up at 250.5, it's 253.5. You would just take the under because theoretically that is like 130 to 120, and you still don't even win the total going over. Yeah. But having said that, like I'm looking at scores for Memphis over the past handful of games. Same thing with the Atlanta Hawks. And there are games that get close to 300 points that they've scored in previous games. So for me, I'm going to go, I'd like to say, like, sometimes you just look at the line, like that's a stone cold line. That line tells me it's over, Ben. That line tells me like 255 points are on the way, and we shouldn't be surprised. Like, we're not even going to overtime, like 151, 148. You just played a game against the Suns talking about the Memphis Grizzlies here. And we know Atlanta doesn't play any defense, and they had an unbelievable game. I believe it was against the Detroit Pistons. Give me the over. 253.5, and I'm going over tonight. Yes, I am.
The Memphis Grizzlies have gone over in 3 of their last 4 games. In DRS, when they have gone over that number, it's not just, hey, the total was 237 and a hook, and it was 238 points. Every time the Grizzlies have played to the over in 3 of their last 4, we have seen at least 255 plus points, including the highest scoring game of the season last week against the Suns, 151-148. As Donny said, nearly 300 points. The Grizzlies have the second highest over percentage in the NBA, 37 of 60 games to the over, 61.7%. Atlanta has played 35 of its 60 games to an over, 58.3%. Thus, you get that number. The Detroit Pistons, playing really good basketball at this moment, of course, did see their 8-game win streak come to a close, but bounced back with a victory over the weekend as well. DRS Detroit on the road tonight in Salt Lake. Detroit, 5-game lead over the Magic for that 6th spot in the Eastern Conference. And as you see there, the Pistons a hefty favorite. No longer double digits, 9-point spread in favor of Detroit. Total 232.5 tonight against the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, Detroit gets the win, but I'm not going to cover them up to 10 points on the road because I do understand how bad the Utah Jazz are, but it's still a game at elevation, which is a little bit quirky for some of the teams not used to playing there. So I do think it's comfortable. And also you saw the graphic was at 10.5. And again, as I told you also, that line is now down to 9. And I agree with that line movement. Pistons win the game, not comfortable laying close to double digits. I'll lean on a bad Jazz team at home just to hang around here tonight.
8-23 straight up at that elevation in Salt Lake. Utah, the worst team in the Western Conference, 15-45, because the Pelicans have actually played better basketball since returning from the All-Star break. 31 home games for Utah this year, booked as a dog in 30 of them, and they are 17-13 against the spread. Despite the fact that Detroit has won 9 of its last 10, they have not been booked as a favorite all that often this year. Just 23 games, 12-11 against the number for the Pistons. Again, Detroit in a great position to not have to flirt with a play-in tournament spot, but a 5-game advantage over Orlando for that 6-7 split. The Pistons a playoff team, and by a comfortable margin, Donny, if the season ended today.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to watch it play out at this point because this is a team that we always thought had a lot of talent, just couldn't put it together. Made some changes here, Kate Cunningham coming into his own, and maybe they could be a factor, but it's great to see Detroit basketball back in the playoffs with a quality team. Hey, how about that?
Still 100-1 for the Pistons to win the Eastern Conference crown, despite the fact they would be a playoff team. I said 5 games over Orlando, 5 games in front of Miami, 5.5 in front of the Magic. Orlando on a slide, now in the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference standings. The prop perspective on a Monday. TV Tom next. The prop perspective to set the stage for this new week. Live on a Monday on the early line on SportsGrid with TV Tom Vecchio of SportsGrid joining us here on TEL. Tom, as always, hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for being here on the early line.
Thanks for having me. It is an awesome time to be a sports fan, as I often say. We have the NHL trade deadline this Friday. We are, absolute crunch time for both NBA and NHL. We are approaching conference tournaments. We have spring training going on. We'll dive into some MLB. Let's get to it.
Let's get right to it, Vecchio. We've got a 7-game slate around the association. 6 games on the ice tonight in the National Hockey League. Both leagues in their stretch run, trying to firm up that playoff positioning all around both the NBA and the NHL. And Tom, don't look now, but if the Detroit Pistons ended their season today, they would be a playoff team from the very jump. No need for a play-in tournament when you have a 5-game lead for the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. Detroit, of course, was riding an 8-game win streak entering the weekend, had that snapped by the Nuggets, but it was still their longest in nearly 2 decades, and did bounce back with a win over the weekend. So 9 of the last 10, the Pistons have been victorious, hoping to continue the winning ways tonight in Salt Lake. 9-point favorite against the Utah Jazz. What's the play for tonight out in Utah?
This is going to Malik Beasley, over 4.5 threes. It's sitting at -106, and 4.5 is a high line. Today there are some different promotions on FanDuel. It is trade day, March 3rd. So some promotions around 3-pointers. Love the fact that he got ejected in the most recent game. Love the fact that he's just taking a high volume of threes, 9.4 attempts per game. That's the 5th most in the league. So we're not looking for him necessarily to be super efficient. And this is what I said yesterday about Anthony Edwards when I was doing in-game live with Jordan Airy. Like, we look at these game logs, and he's taking 10, 11, 12, 13 attempts, which is great. And we look at the matchup, obviously, Utah, bottom 10 league in terms of most threes allowed. So we can get the promotions involved, we can go for the number, and we get the ejection coming off this, recent narrative, whatever you want to call it. But the volume of attempts should be there. So he doesn't need to go out there and hit 5 out of 6, 5 out of 8. He can go 5 out of 15, and that's totally fine, and puts him in the spot to hit over 4.5 threes tonight.
Volume, volume, volume. And when we say that in the NBA tonight, no more volume than a game, Tom, that has 253.5 points on the board here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm not even asking for a handicap X's and O's here. When you see numbers like that, and again, I always like to point out, they don't just pick this number out of a hat. It's like, wow, can't believe they came up with that. There's a reason for it. When you see numbers like this, what's your thought process on that?
My thought process is that we're going to see so many possessions back and forth, which can lead to various different things in the prop market, depending on, like, you have to tell yourself a story. Like, are you going to say, like, oh, these players are going to be taking all these shots? And obviously they're going to hit a ton. So a lot of players will be cruising over their player props in terms of points, PRA, whatever it might be. But it also means that we can probably key in on some players to theoretically ladder up. I don't like going to necessarily so many spots. I would actually rather take the under on this game overall. And then if it starts off slow, we can hit a live over, maybe a 230 live over-ish. And then we have a nice wiggle room to find like a really, really solid middle where the game ends on 240. No one's going to be surprised based on the initial game line and the offense is back and forth. But we actually have an opportunity to find like a lot of value, both live and then from the pregame number. So you could take it whichever way you want. If you think everyone's going to be cruising over their points, just bet like 4 different players, 5 different players, and you just hope that 3 of the 5 go over and you'll come out net positive.
Vecchio, at this stage, if you're involved in the postseason, whether that be just a playoff spot from the very start or battling for play-in tournament positioning, every game is going to have a little bit more significance in terms of your overall record and where you stand in that seed list. 2 spots tonight. The Oklahoma City Thunder, 10.5 game advantage now for the 1 seed out west, but battling a Rockets team that is trying to host the opening round of the playoffs if they can be the 4 seed, currently in that 5 spot in the Western Conference standings. 9.5 point spread in favor of OKC at home. A potential play-in tournament preview from the very start. That 9-10 matchup in Dallas. The Mavericks getting 2.5 points against the Sacramento Kings at home. Of course, Dallas without Luka Doncic and still does not have Anthony Davis out there just yet either. In any of those 2 spots, Vecchio, where do you think you can find that best handicap for a game that should have a lot of implications?
Yeah, so for Sacramento, they recently announced that Sabonis is out indefinitely. I believe it's a grade 1 hamstring issue, grade 1, grade 2, whatever it is. But he's going to be out indefinitely. Like that removes such a high volume of production out of their offense. So it's going to be someone else stepping up. So I don't mind looking to a Zach LaVine, also again a player, or Keegan Murray, a player we can throw into like this trade day promotion. Players that we know shoot high volume of threes and are very good at it. So the offense that is missing because of Sabonis, along with the rebounds, if you want to go there, that's certainly fine. But I think looking for the offense against a Mavericks defense, I'm not particularly super high on. I think you can go there as well. I don't have a specific pick for that game, but of course, if I have something later, I'll of course find it over on Twitter and post that there.